although not necessary, it's, you know, I should give it. I'm 41. I'm married. My wife, Marissa, holds a PhD in biomedical engineering, so she's the smarter one. Why is she not here and I am? Well, because we have 2 babies. Our boy Abraham is 3 years old, just turned 3, June 22nd. The feast of John Fisher and Thomas More, so he's privileged. Hopefully he gets to die for the faith, but when I'm dead. My daughter Bernadette, she is 1 year old, turned 1 August 28th, the feast of St. Augustine. So hopefully she lives and writes great theological treatises, just as St. Augustine did. And I've been doing this here for 12 to 15 years, somewhere thereabouts. Like I said, I have a business degree, business administration, an emphasis in marketing, so my whole goal is to sell this. I'm a marketing major, so I'm going to try to sell it as best as I can. I'm also pursuing a master's in biblical theology. I have about 11 classes now, full in. Philosophical undergrad classes, some biblical undergrad classes, as well as graduate classes. I took 2 years off in 2015 because of my babies, and I was working 2 jobs at the time. So I'm back in school. I just started 4 weeks ago. My next class is on Monday. So right now I'm reading a lot. I have a lot of reading to do. It's one of the hardest things I've done. Again, my emphasis is on biblical theology, so a lot of what I do is the Bible, the Old Testament. I give talks, I do Bible studies in various places. I met David at a Bible study in LA that I filled in. I think I met you when I was doing Exodus. Yeah. So I was doing Exodus. I recently did 2 classes of Exodus, which is where probably some of these ladies come from. I did two talks on Exodus and Holy Family. So this is my hobby. You know, this is like what I like to do. I've been a somewhat devout, committed Catholic, as much as one can be. I am still a sinner, so still working on my own salvation, fear and trembling. For about 19, 20 years old. I'm the crazy one in the family, the Jesus freak. Right? This is what I believe wholeheartedly. Nothing can change my mind. Like, this is it. Well, the devil can, and hopefully he doesn't. I taught junior high theology from 2012 to 2015. I don't have teaching credentials, but the priest really liked my style and wanted me to get in there, so I did it on the condition that it would be temporarily, because you take a huge, huge, huge pay cut. So if you wonder why men are not teaching in Catholic schools, it's because the gate's not there. But it was highly successful, so that kind of worked out, and I've been teaching high school confirmation and adult faith formation. When I get my degree, hopefully I'll get a job at the diocese and teaching teachers how to teach. And the school that I'm at has a satellite office here in the Diocese of Warren, so hopefully that's get off the ground in the next 4 years, and I can find myself employed. For now, what I do is I'm a mortgage broker and an underwriter. I work for a big company. I structure things on the back end. I push papers. I look at numbers. I help people get loans. I have my own company just for family and friends. That's what I do. So that I've been in that industry since. So if you heard anything about the mortgage industry in the past, 10 years, you know that it's really horrible. A lot of people got ripped off. People lost their homes, etc. And that is true. Thank God. I work with my cousin. We've been blessed. Run some pretty ethical standards. Try to look over our clientele, and we've weathered that poor storm. And so you treat people right, treat people fair, and that's the way it should be done. Doesn't mean everything will be gravy for you, but I've been blessed to have that job and have this work for 2003 till now. So about 15 years, close to 15 years. So that's what I do for a living. I'm married, I have kids. Anything else? Some of you are guests, meaning some of you do not have to sign up for this class. You're just here because you were invited, and that's fine. Class is free and open as long as seats are available. I do not mind it. The rest of you who are students, you're signing up. Most of you probably because you have to. You're going to get married, yes? Yeah, so see, that's why he's here. I can tell him to look at his face. Right? But he wants to be with the woman he wants to marry, and she's nagging, and probably her family is nagging, and his mom is saying, te tienes que casar por la iglesia, and that's why he's here, okay? You guys are probably here, you're young, probably not engaged, probably because your parents are making you. Oh, you are engaged, okay. What about yourself?
I just had a baby.
Just had a baby. Okay, so there you go. Is anybody here because their parents are making them? You have a parent who's a mom at home or a dad. Okay, there you go. So they're here, definitely. So those of you who are students, you will sign up, you will register. Those of you who are not, you've either heard me speak or somebody told you, and that's why you're here. For those of you who are here as guests, let me just tell you this. This is an introduction So although I do recommend the basics and I recommend people to know them and know them well to where you can just kind of spit them off the top of your head, it's good for you to sit through it. But it won't be some of the high biblical stuff like you saw this past month, for those of you who heard me speak on Exodus. It won't be that kind of detail because my audience in front of me it just won't. Now why do I say that, my audience in front of me? Because the reality is, where's the church at today? Most people who call themselves Catholic do not know anything about what the Catholic Church teaches. And as a matter of fact, most people here in Santa Ana probably only call themselves Catholics because they think, well, I'm Mexican, I should be Catholic. Right? And so that's why, mom and dad are Catholic, and that's why you still associate yourself as Catholics. But, the minute some Jehovah's Witness or some Mormon or Protestant meets you at work or talks to you, and they enlightened you to everything because you were in darkness your whole life, then you switch over and become something else. So why am I here? So hopefully that when they do come knock on your door, you will already be enlightened. And you would already know that you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be at, and that's here in the Catholic Church. Ask me plain and simple, does God want everyone to be Catholic? Yes, He does. He does. And I can make that argument philosophically, theologically, historically, and sociologically, really. And that's what we're going to do. That's what I'm going to do. Before we even open up the Bible or talk about the Catechism of the Catholic Church or what the Church teaches, I'm going to start off the first couple of classes as if they were philosophy classes. Now, I know you're rolling your eyes because philosophy is hard and boring. I get it. It was for me too. But it's necessary. Meaning, if we're going to make arguments to why we believe what we believe, then those arguments need to be reasonably logical. So it's important that we have that foundation. Now, before I hand out the notes for this class, I won't always have notes. So my recommendation is this. You bring something that has some sheets of paper so you can take notes. Again, I can't make you take notes, but it's for your benefit. But my goal is to type up my notes in some kind of outline manner so at least you can follow me. The reason I'm doing that is because there's several individuals in this class taking this class so then they can repeat it and teach it at their parishes. So that's why I'm trying to do this for them. David, Ema, I'm typing them out now, David. So you'll have it. Yeah, I know. So I am making an effort for them. My information will be on here, my name and my email address. Doug assists me. He's been with me for 5-6 years now. He'll open up the door. He'll hand out the roll sheet. Lori, David's sister, and her husband Jerry are out at, where are they at? In Cabo San Lucas. They'll be here next week. She will be in charge of just kind of managing it, like gathering stuff and make sure, because Doug and I are just horrible. We're two guys who somehow just managed to get by. But at the last minute, we find ourselves doing admin work. So you need a lady to kind of put you in shape, and Lori has volunteered to do that. Her husband, Jerry, you'll meet him next week. He was a Protestant up until, what, 5 months ago? 5 months ago. He came to this class, had no intention of converting to Catholicism, fought me for about 3 weeks, and then decided it was the way to go. So he has to take the class because he has to take it from beginning to end, and that was one of the conditions. But him and his wife will be joining us next week. If you have friends who are interested, I suggest you bring them as soon as possible before we cut off roll. Now, it starts now, and it goes all the way until I'll have a syllabus and an outline of my schedule and the talks on there next week for you. I'm still kind of debating and working on some stuff. It'll end in May of next year. It amounts to about 32 classes, okay? So you're looking at about 2 semesters worth of education. Now, it could be 1 semester, but I don't run 3-hour classes or 4-hour classes, depending on what kind of college class you're taking. So these are only an hour and 45 minutes, an hour and a half, depending on the break. So that's why it's so long. At $95, this class is still one of the cheapest in the Diocese of Orange. I think most of them run $125 to $150. I upped it from $175 to $95 because my goal is to buy a Bible for every student and buy the Bible that I want you to have. And it's not my Bible, it's going to be a different Bible. The reason that is, it's a Catholic Answers Bible that has inserts and it's really beneficial for you guys. Mine doesn't have that just simply because it doesn't. If you have a Bible already and it is a Catholic Bible, and you want to waive the $95, you can. You can show me your Bible. However, the Bible I'm hoping to get for you guys, well, here it is. Thank you. Now he's got the nice leather-bound one. I'm not buying you this. Then you really have to up your account. But this is the Bible. Now, if you want to buy your own Bible like his, of the kind I'm going to get, you can. And then I'll drop the price, you know, what, 20, 15 bucks. I think then we'll go to 80, because I think we're jumping to 80 anyway. You can, by all means you can. And I will have a printout of this, so you can, or I'll send out an email of this, is if you want this leather-bound copy. Now why the leather-bound copy is good is because it's just durable. I can bring you my hardbound copy, and it's just torn up. It's already got pages missing. And Alyssa bought me this. I've been fighting using it because this doesn't have my notes, and it's really hard for me to use this. But now I just decided this is all I'm bringing. My other one is in the truck, and I'll have to put that to rest. And I own various Bible editors. But that's the one I like to use. It's the one I use. It's not the one I'm buying for you guys. Why? Because mine doesn't have all the notes. And it's a translation that I use for school. So this is it. This is what I want to get you, because look at this. Why do Catholics have 73 bucks as opposed to the Protestant 66? And so there you have it, you know, for 65. Did I say that right? No, 66. 7 bucks. So it answers questions here for Catholics. Why do Catholics confess to a priest? And so when you're talking to somebody and you have somebody who asks you that question, you'll have this here. Now I know, you know, I spent a year of my life going door to door knocking. I did street evangelization, so we would just stand on the street and talk to people and debate. I used to debate when I was younger, debated Muslims, Protestants, atheists. So I did a lot of that when I was younger. So with that comes a lot of repetition. So I can, you know, when Jehovah's Witnesses come at my door, I get my cup of coffee, I get ready, you know, and I welcome them in and have a nice little conversation with them. And then they realize they're not ready, so then they leave. But for you, if you're not there, you'll have this. And that's why I want you to have it. It's got these nice inserts, and I think that's pretty neat. And so I want to get that for you. If you do want to get yourself the higher end leather one, then just let me know, and we'll mark it on your registration and you'll pay less. By all means, if you're vested in your Bible, then that means you'll use it. Okay? Because this is the Word of God, infallible. As you saw, we started off. And why did I start off with Genesis 1? Any questions? If anybody is married currently but living civilly, you're not married in the church, just so you know, you'll have to take care of that marriage before you receive any sacrament of confirmation. Or we'll have to have you on some plan. And by that I mean this. Do you already have a date on when you're getting married in the church? May 5th. May 5th, great. Are you already living together with her? Okay. So a day or two before his marriage, he'll have to go to confession. And then he'll be married, and then he'll be good in the church. And after that, he'll do his confirmation with me. Because you cannot be living in a sinful situation and then receive confirmation or, you know, do your Holy Communion. Does anybody here need to be baptized? No. Okay, good. That's a little bit better. Who is married civilly and is in the situation he is? Raise your hand. Okay, so each of you have to have a plan, and what I'll do is I help you on that plan. I write a letter. If you're, how many of you are not getting married here at this parish? Okay, then I can write a letter saying you're enrolled in the class, you've had X amount of classes done. Do you already have a date?
The father just wanted me to start.
Okay, so once you start the class, then you can already start on the date. Okay, great, great. So it's not the end all be all. I'm not here to look at you and say, oh, you wicked person, I can't believe you did that, right? No, again, why we find ourselves in this situation is really because of lack of information. We didn't know any better. Now, if you just go one generation behind us, right, my parents' generation and their parents' generation, then it wasn't heard of for anybody to live together before they got married in the church. If your mom is from some pueblo in Michoacán, Aguascalientes, or Aguascalientes, whatever the case may be, you know, you would have had to have gotten married in the church. So I get it. You know, our parents came here and their parents came here, and we got caught up in America and working, and somehow work and money and house became more important than God and the commandments in heaven. And it's not a knock, it's not a blame, it's just our priorities got mixed up. On a weekly basis, my priorities get mixed up, and so I have to go to confession. So that's kind of where this is coming from. I just want to make sure I get all of this so you understand what you're getting, and I make myself clear up front. For those of you who are in that situation, know that we're here to work with you in every way, shape, or form. If anybody, for financial reasons, cannot pay the registration, we're here. Why do we charge what we charge? Because I'm very expensive. I'm just kidding, I'm not. It's free. But because these lights cost something, and if anybody has a house and pays an electric bill, you'll know that Southern California Edison is pretty much robbing us. Our bills aren't a lot. But they don't have solar panels here, so they got to pay for this, and it's expensive. And it costs a lot of money. But it's not the end-all be-all for some reason. But of course, don't come to me and say, I can't afford it, and while you're telling me that, you're on your iPhone 10, you know, your $1,000 phone, and then I'm just looking at you like that. Render to Caesar what is Caesar, to God what is God. Any questions? No. Now, going to the question of questions. When you have a question, raise your hand, no matter what it is, or what topic it is. I went to Sunday this past Sunday, and I heard this. What do you think about that? And then we'll answer it. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. For some of my guests who are here, and if you have more advanced questions, feel free to ask them, and I'll see how it caters to the class. Or for those of you who have taken this class before, and you feel like I'm missing to say something, feel free to raise your hand and bring up a question or make a statement. That's very helpful. I don't mind being interrupted. So David, if I miss something, or Becky, if you hear something that should be said, by all means bring it up. Okay. Try to show up on time. I'm even trying to think of maybe we should show up 10 minutes early, or maybe have 10 minutes early so we can at least pray a decade of the rosary. So hopefully I can impress upon you prayer, 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 prayer. I pray my rosary every day. I have for the past 25 years. God willing, I'll do it to the day that I die. So this is a great way for us to learn our prayers and for us to learn our Bible. But I will have handout sheets, and I'm kind of still working on if we'll do a decade of the rosary, how that will look and how that will be. Did I miss anything, or should I have brought up anything else? No?
Last year you had the little cards that you write there.
And that is what good, great.
I have that box of cards at home. I'll bring it.
Okay, we have a box, and it's a question box, and if you want to ask an anonymous question, you can. And you write the question on there, or let's just say I'm teaching something, you get a random question, you just feel like it's random. You'll ask that, we'll hand out cards, and you'll just drop it in. The next week of class, I'll answer it. I really would like the questions to be answered to the whole audience. Now, I taught junior high, so let me just tell you this. Get over yourself and get on with it, because trust me, here are my questions in junior high. What's going to happen if the zombie apocalypse? My mom's divorced and married somebody else. What's going to happen to her? Is she going to go to heaven? My dad's a Protestant, doesn't like the Catholic Church. What does that mean for him? What about masturbation? What about pornography? My older brother is 20-some years old and living with his girlfriend. So, you get to a point, I mean, if 7th and 8th graders can ask questions that matter of factly in a classroom setting, then come on, you're adults. But that box will be there too. Why I say that is because I do want that dynamic here. I do want those questions asked, I'm used to, like I said, I spent a year door-to-door knocking. You'll be surprised I did not get the door slammed on me maybe as much as Mormons, Jehovah's Witnesses did. Most people were extremely receptive. Most people thought, oh, you're a Catholic? Wow. And then they would just talk to me, Met Mormons, we had the same neighborhood, so we would run across each other. My tactic with Mormons is that I'd stay and talk with them for about 3.5 hours. So that way they wouldn't knock on anybody else's door. And speaking of Mormons, one of the things that I did with these Mormons, these 2 young Mormons, when I talked to them, is I got to this class. This is what I talked to them for about 3 hours. And they were making arguments about Mormonism, and in their arguments, it failed to logically follow a pattern. Their arguments and their beliefs will lack, and it starts to fall apart. Now, they didn't know that, but I had these 2 young guys, 24, 26, they had some college, and as we were going through them, and I was telling them, I go, do you see how this doesn't make sense? Do you see how this is not following? And one of the guys, the Mormons are excellent, just really hospitable, really great people. I remember one of the guys saying, yeah, I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about it like that. So, what is this first class? It's about logic. It's about how we think. And so, Doug, if you can do, or Alyssa, if you can do me a favor and hand these out, sorry. I'll pick on you again. So you can tell me not to fill that in. As the notes are being handed out to you, St. Peter, and now here's the other thing. how many of you Catholics have ever opened up a Bible? Okay, good. Now, not the ones who are guests, I'm sure. I mean, your wife, you guys go to dating mass, that's a good story. But for those of you who are students, good. Some of you have. But you'll notice most of us haven't. And yet here it is, the most important book for us as Catholics. You know, the #1 best-selling book is a Catholic book. Because the Bible is a Catholic book. It is a Catholic book. The funny thing is, people will knock on your door and use a Catholic book to try to tell you why the Catholic Church is wrong. And a lot of people believe it. But 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15 says this, and this is 1 Peter, and this is our Pope. This is on your notes, so I made it easier for you the first day of class. I will get to the point in class where you'll have to kind of flip through and find things. So I want you to get used to that. 1 Peter says this, always prepare to make a defense to anyone who calls you to account for the hope, your faith, I put that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and reverence. So to be able to give a defense of why we believe what we believe. Now, why Christianity is falling by the wayside in the Western world and in America, and why the Catholic Church is lacking in America, is because our kids, and how old are you? 22. Our kids in his generation went through grade school and high school with very little understanding of Christianity and Catholicism, and as their teachers were teaching them some anti-Christian, anti-Catholic teachings, they didn't defend it. They didn't do anything about it. They just sat there and took it in. As you normally would, because if you're in college, you should trust your professors. However, where are we at now in this day and age? Most colleges are probably not worth the paper on which their degrees are printed on. And I can easily name 30 colleges you should avoid, but I won't because it's really important. But let's face it, you don't need to, it's not rocket science. Now, I am not against higher education. I mean, my wife has a PhD, I'm pursuing a master's, you know. I'm not going to be against higher education in any way, shape, or form. The problem is our higher education in its public sector, and even in the Catholic sector, has been really watered down and ideologically tilted to a certain ideology. And where normally your professor would challenge you with truthful thoughts and get you to think a certain way, now what they're just giving you is their opinions and their beliefs and what we should believe. And that's all they're giving to us. For instance, you talk to a college student nowadays, and oh, God doesn't exist, and we don't need God to explain the earth and the universe, right? We have the Big Bang. And I'm thinking, what does that answer? We have science. And I'm just thinking, you haven't answered anything. You haven't given me anything. But somehow they think they've been enlightened because they know the word science and Big Bang. And that's pretty impressive, I guess. But it is pretty impressive to 95% of the population. And that gets circulated on and on and on, and before you know it, you have a bunch of Catholics who were raised, whose parents were devout believers, who now feel suspect of their abuelita, who goes to the church every day to praise her rosary. Oh, she doesn't know. She just doesn't know. It's because she didn't go to college. But no, it's not where we're at. So, to defend our faith, for you, it's going to be to learn it. For me, it'll be to defend it. And what do I have to defend it from? From all the education you've received, or most of the education you've received. I have to kind of rework some of that, and hopefully get you to kind of buy into this. We mustn't be ashamed of the gospel. Paul says this, for I am not ashamed of the gospel, it is the power of God for the salvation of everyone who believes. For Jew first and then the Greek. Don't be ashamed of what you believe. I believe in Jesus Christ. Yes, I believe he died and rose from the dead. Rise from the dead. That's not like this show. It's just a myth. It didn't really happen. It's just what the early Christians wanted to believe. No, he rose from the dead. Scour the earth. Think about it, if you wanted to disprove Christianity, and the Romans did 2,000 years ago, if you wanted to disprove Christianity, and the Jews did 2,000 years ago, all you had to do, 1 year after the death of Jesus Christ in 34 AD, is go dig up the bones of Jesus and say, here's your Savior. Where's this resurrection? It never happened. It never happened. And it'll never happen. Why? Because they can't. Meaning there's already been so many people who want to disprove and who have wanted to disprove Christianity and discredit Jesus Christ and the Catholic Church, yet they've never had the substance to do it. So where are we at now in 2017? Well, we just make up lies, and we just sell those lies. On the History Channel, Discovery Channel, UCLA, UCI, Cal State, insert name here, whatever the case may be. Right? And this is where we're at. And I know some of you are nodding your heads because you've probably been to some of these college classes and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Again, I'm not belittling your degree, I have one. A business major. Stuck more to math. But I remember why I'm teaching. Let me just tell you this. Why am I teaching? Because, what is it, 2001, right? 9/11? Is that what it was, 2001? I'm at Cal State Fullerton, just transferred, so I went to junior college. I'm a product of this environment, you know, grew up here, and everything that has here. But there I was, 9/11 happened, and I remember getting out of work, and I worked a full-time job, went to school at night, and I'm a privileged individual in the essence that I live in this great country. I mean, thank God I don't live in Mexico, right? And it just irks me when I hear these young kids talk about, oh, California used to be Mexico, and I tell me, thank God it isn't. That's why my parents came here. But anyways, and there I was in class, and after 9/11, just simply a week after, professors. Now, I'm in econ, and I'm a business major, so you got economics, and you have all this, and professors are quick. It's like the whole staff got a memo to tell every student, well, students, just remember, you know, they did what they did because they believe that that's right, and that's their truth. And who are we to say that their truth is wrong? And I'm a business major. For one, I'm thinking to myself, why are we even talking about this? You know, I want to make money. I want to start my own business. This was at the time, right? And then two, I just thought to myself, well, what do you mean that's their truth? And what do you mean this is my truth? Either something is true or it isn't. Either what I believe is true or what they believe is true. And insert they for whatever you want. It could be Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. We're going to talk about all these religions. And so then it just struck me at that moment. Well, wait. And then I came home thinking to myself, now my mom, she's been reading St. Augustine all her life, all my life, daily mass for 40 years. My mom is a well-educated Catholic, so she's not, you know, she's read church fathers. My mom knows the Bible, knows the greatest theologian the church has ever known, St. Augustine. She's got over 50 of his books. I remember in the morning, she'd get home from daily mass here, 6:30 in the morning. She would wake up at 4:30, go jog 6 miles, come to mass here, and then go home, and then get ready, make us breakfast, get whatever it is to cook, and then when we're all gone, she'd get her book of St. Augustine and read that. But then I came home and started to think to myself, well, wait, am I going to be good and do the things that I do and go to mass and go to confession and have this not be true? I don't want that. I don't want to be lied to. I don't want to be deceived. So then I started on this great journey. Is what I believe true? And if it is, then what is the implication of my life? What does that mean for me? For those of you who are taking this class because somebody told you you need to get married in the church, now maybe you're just doing it because somebody told you you need to get married in the church and the way you're living right now is wrong. But sooner or later you get to the point that says, yeah, I shouldn't have done this. And yeah, I should really have done it. But when you get to that point, when you get to the point that you know what you believe. So, you got to know our faith. I got to defend it so that you can know it. You can't be ashamed of the gospel. And trust me, if anybody is in a public circle, especially for you, who's my youngest person here? Give me an 18-year-old. Remember, this is an adult class, so 18 or over. How old are you? 18. So there you go. Are you in high school or already done with high school? You're in high school. You're a senior. Imagine her. What's your name?
Judith.
Judith. Oh, such a beautiful name. Judith in the Bible. You are privileged. Okay? The women in the Bible have just profound stories. Except for Jezebel. But anyways, Judith. I mean, just think about this. I mean, you go to school and imagine if you start telling people, oh, I'm taking a confirmation class. Well, what do they teach today? Well, my teacher started reading the first book of Genesis, and you know, he read that whole, you know, God created them male and female. And so I think he believes that marriage is only between a man and a woman. What? He believes that? Why, you know he's wrong, right? It's because he doesn't know any better. And there you know, then you start to cower and it's like, oh, what am I going to say? Can't really tell them what I believe. So don't be ashamed of the gospel. Now I get why most of us and most of you have been. It's because we don't know. We don't know. But I'll tell you this, that why I teach it is because it's good, it's free, and it's liberating. And I've seen people embrace it, dramatically embrace it, and have it change their life. And I'll bring up the topic of same-sex marriage because, fine, that's a big topic. But it's not just same-sex marriage, because remember, that's just one sin amongst many. You know, there are, you know, the biggest thing probably, just as grave a sin is premarital sex, and how many people are having premarital sex. But let's just take that, same-sex marriage. I remember teaching this very same class in the very same manner that I teach it, and I don't know who my audience is, I never do. And there was a young man in that class, about 30 years old at the time. This was maybe about 7 years ago. His name was Thomas. And after I got done teaching the class, he comes up to me, and this was an 8-week class. So this was a little bit different because they'd already been baptized in First Communion. But I did the 7 sacraments, and so I talked about marriage and did this very big class here. And I remember Thomas came up to me afterwards, and he said, you know what? He goes, I want to thank you. And I said, for what? He said, that was the best presentation on Christianity I'd ever heard. I said, oh, thanks. He goes, it was great. And I said, oh, can I tell you something? I said, sure you can. He says, I've been suffering with same-sex attraction for all my life. Up until last year, I've been in a relationship. I've been bounced around in various relationships. And I've come to realize that this isn't what God wants. But I've been struggling with it. He says, the last 2 talks you gave on marriage have really helped me to understand things better and see things more clearly. And have really given me purpose for why I'm doing what I'm doing. And allowed me to see that what God had, the plan God has for me is greater than my own desires. That was Thomas. And why shouldn't we be ashamed of the gospel? Because it's liberating. It frees you up. It allows you to be a better man, a better husband for your wife, a better wife for your husband, a better mother for your children, a better father for your children. God wants to give us the best. Jesus says this, seek the truth and the truth will set you free. He wants us to have truth and have it to the full, he says. God wants you to be happy. Every single individual on earth, God wants to be happy. The reason we aren't happy is because we don't listen. So just know that. Take ownership of what you believe. Take ownership of the Christian doctrine. Let people know that you're Catholic. Let them know that you're a practicing Christian. Now let me pause here. Some of you might be hearing and say, well, what is he? Is he a Christian or is he a Catholic? Okay. Did anybody have that question? Do you understand? Every Catholic is the Christian. As a matter of fact, Catholicism is the fullness of Christianity. Now usually, most of you have, a tío or a tía, and he's Cristiano, right? And you're Católico. And we've made that division, right? But no, he's a Protestant, which means he protested against the original Christian teaching. And so that's a Protestant. You're a Christian. The original Christian, the fullness of Christian. It's not to say he's not Christian, because a Christian is somebody who believes Jesus lived, died, and rose from the dead, and is true God and true man. Okay, that's a full definition of Christians. Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses might call themselves Christians, but they lack the belief that Jesus is true God and true man. So they're not really Christians, although don't get into that argument with them. But a Christian believes in Jesus Christ. And so your uncle or your aunt or your cousin who's a Protestant is a Christian, but lacks. His Christianity is lacking. It doesn't have the fullness of Christianity. You as Catholics have the fullness. You have everything. I mean, think about it. Why go for half the pie when you can have the whole thing? Right? Catholicism is the whole thing. Don't give me half. Why have 66 in the books of the Bible when you can have 73? At work. There I am at work. And if I take a picture of my desk, you'll see I have this big book, like a massive book. It's on the Bible. It's by a biblical scholar. And then I have another book, and then I have my study Bible, and then today I had this Bible on there, and then another book on my desk. So 2 days ago, there I am, and it's like, it's towards the end of the day, and I've done most of my work yet. So there I am, and bring out my gospel, my New Testament. It's a study Bible, so it's a little bigger, and I'm reading it, doing some homework, gearing up for my class this Monday, and one guy at work who works for our company, but he's not in the office, comes up and goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Ex Cristiano." I said, "Yeah, I'm Catholic." I said, said, what about you? He goes, oh, no, soy cristiano. I said, oh, you're Protestant. He didn't know how to answer. But, he was being kind of Protestant. And then he goes, oh, yeah, well, I know you guys have some extra books in the Bible. And I said, yes, I know you have less. But wouldn't you want them all? You don't want to get into that conversation. And finally we went on and went to our business. And I'm like, hey, and I just told him I won't, his name is Juan. I said, Juan, hey, just think about what you're missing here. You got 7 extra books, you're lacking, come on board. But anyways, so that's what, understand that. I will identify as a Christian. You are a Christian. And don't get confused. When I talk about Protestantism, I'm talking about Christians who have split the church. And I will teach that. I think next week, or if time permits today, we'll be able to do that. Okay, reasons to believe. And I'm kind of following the outline here on your notes, and you can add whatever you want to add on there. Apologetics, apologia in the Greek, is the art of explaining and defending the faith, right? Christianity, the Catholic faith, that's what it is, it's apologetics. Now, atheists have apologists. They have people who defend their atheistic positions. Protestants have apologists. They have Protestants who defend their position. It's a theological art that must rest on a firm foundation of theological science, but use all that is true at its disposal. For instance, if somebody wanted to talk to me about the nature of marriage, I could probably have a 3-hour conversation on the nature of marriage without ever bringing up the Bible, God, or religion. Because I can bring up truth, philosophically, nature, biologically, science, and so I can do that. Of course, you have to know it, but of course, it's not about just learning theology or religion. It's everything that is true, we use it for our disposal. If it's true, then it comes from God. There's nothing to hide. When my junior high kids would always bring up when I talk about God, and when I read what I read, and why I read Genesis, so I highlight, I pause and I highlighted these things. This is creation. And then sometimes you'll hear these professors talk about, well, look at the Christians in their Bible, and look at the contradictions, talking about the water in the air and the water below. Don't they know that's the sky? And see, that's how dumb they were. Not understanding at all anything of the symbolic nature in which the author was writing Genesis. And day 1 and day 2. And how can there be days if there's not even the sun and the moon? Not understanding at all that it was written in Hebrew. And in Hebrew, the original Hebrew word is a period. And so how long is that period? And if evolution is true, and evolution is true insofar as we have evolution of evolution of species, we see evolution in plants and birds and everything. But let's just say that man evolved from ape, right? Well, you probably believe that, right? That's true. Well, that is a hypothesis. That's a thesis, and it's a popular one in the science community. However, it's not an absolute fact. And so I used to tell my students this. I'm like, well, there's a difference between an evolution of species and evolution of kind, where one kind of species evolves into another kind of species. We don't see that in science. Now, the big thing they're trying to do is that monkeys and apes are similar to humans. And so they try to force in this thing. Now, I say try, and I will admit, it's not my expertise. Okay? It's not my expertise. So if it ever becomes fact that we evolved from monkeys, then does that disprove the very pages, the very verses I just read to you? No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. As a matter of fact, there are some great, strong Catholic theologians who already hold that position. Because when you're reading the Bible, what does the Bible say? It said he created a male and female, he created them. It doesn't tell you how he created them. Science tells you how, God tells you why. Why did he create them? To be fruitful and multiply. Yeah. Victor, you want to have a question? Ask it.
Yeah, but didn't you see maybe in Oregon?
Right, but I'm just talking about scientifically, he doesn't tell us how that process happened, right? And the image and likeness were created, meaning there's something unique about you that separates you every other living creature in the entire universe. Notice I use universe in case somebody wanted to ask about aliens. It's not a junior high audience, but know that I dealt with it. Know that I dealt with it. But there's something unique about us, right? So why I wanted you to read that Genesis is because it's true. Sometimes people read these books, and if, I'm serious, you watch the History Channel, and they'll really tear up Genesis 1, 2, and 3. I mean, they'll make it sound like, man, that's just wrong, and you know, it's pious Christian belief and pious Jewish belief by now. But they're not understanding who wrote that passage, why they wrote it, and the time that they wrote it, and why they used the words that they did. But nothing in what I read to you, nothing in what I read to you has ever been disproven by any scientist or anyone doing any kind of historical or academic or scientific study. It's never been disproven. So the Bible that you and I hold, the Bible that I hold, you don't hold one, but the Bible that I hold, this is the truth. And truth does not contradict truth. It's truth always. So, and don't look at me as I'm some kind of like evolution denier. I'm not. I mentioned evolution of species, okay? I mean, we can see evolution all the time. I mean, do you know my cousin has a tree right now that's going to give off, one tree that will give off a variety of citrus. Not just lemon, but lemon, lime, orange, grapefruit, just on one tree. How is that possible? Well, genetic evolution of that species. But that citrus tree, right, was never before a squid. Right? That would be evolution of kind, right? So there's the difference. Doug, yes?
You guys might not believe this, but I drank a beer with a monkey, and it's not a, and smoked a cigar with a monkey, I swear. Can you explain that?
Doug, this is not what you're supposed to be bringing up. The fact that Doug had a beer and a cigar with a monkey leads me to think that Doug is not suitable in this position.
It's true.
The good news is that he has gone to confession since that night. I forgive you, Doug. So, apologetics, look at that. Nature, creation, Scripture, the Bible, Revelation, life itself. How do you defend things? Here, I'll show you how to defend certain things just using life itself. Catholics. Why do you Catholics have saints? Why do you have pictures of the Virgin Mary? And, I mean, my goodness. Do you need that many pictures of saints in your church? I love this church. Love it. Love it. This is one of my favorite churches. Okay? But why? Why? And then you just look at them and you walk into their house and you say, why do you have so many pictures of your grandma, your grandpa, and your kids? Seriously? You see them every day and you have pictures of your kids? I mean, come on. You know, a man opens up his wallet, especially a military man, a Marine, and what does he have in his wallet? A picture of who? His wife. Oh, why? Why do you see, there you go, life in general. It's within our nature. It's within our nature to honor, to commemorate. And so there you have it. It has nothing to do with worship or adoring or having false gods. As a matter of fact, when somebody knocks at your door and tells you to tear down that statue of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Virgin Mary because you're worshiping idols, just look at them and say, well, go home and tear down all the pictures of your wives, your kids, and your family members because you're worshiping idols. And then they're going to say, no, I'm not. Then you look at them and say, no, I'm not. Some of the best arguments are the ones you already have. You just haven't heard. Apologetics flows from doctrine and dogma and devotion. Your prayer life. Every Christian, right, should have the habit praying in the morning when he wakes up and thanking God, right, for another day. I mean, think about it. Texas, Houston, Harvey, Irma, Florida, Puerto Rico, Mexico City.
And the world's going to need them all.
What I'm saying is we should be grateful, right? Pray every morning. You know, I have a habit of kissing my scapular, you know, just thanking Mary, thanking Jesus for another day, you know, and reminding myself this is what I'm dedicated to, right? I grab my rosary when I'm on the way out of the house, right? So when I take my lunch break, I can walk around and pray my rosary and hopefully have it done before I get home, right? So prayer and praying at night. And what do you do at night? You thank God for the day that you had, and you ask for forgiveness, knowing that you can die that night, and who knows where you end up if you die. It's pretty big. Asking God for forgiveness. So how do we explain and teach the faith with the Bible, with the creeds, but with logic, philosophy, science, nature, history, and common sense? Sorry, that should be common sense, so somebody can correct that. I have my pin here somewhere. No, actually, I brought a pen just purposely so that I can use my own pen. Oh, here it is. Common sense, so that should be common. So feel free to cross that out. Actually, Alyssa, do you have these notes? Do you have a copy of them?
Yeah.
You do? Okay, what you can do is, as I'm going through them, if they're, you just edit, and then if you can email me, or I can send you the Word document. You can correct it for me.
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, good. Again, if I haven't told you, she's my godson's daughter, so if you wonder why, I take advantage of you. So reasons why, okay? Why do we have to go through this? Why am I even teaching you this, which is very basic? Christianity, the Catholic Church, and the culture and society today, right? There's nothing more credulity, there's no more than credulity, right? Gullibility, naivete, bigotry, and superstition. People equate religion with prejudice, backwardness, and resistance to progress. Imagine that. You're resistant, you're so backwards. I mean, I used to love when I'd be with my wife and people would put down the faith and somehow think we were dumb, and I'm just like, oh, I just got a PhD. And it's not in Chicano studies. It's a real one.
Yeah.
In biomedical engineering, I mean, you're pretty smart to have that, you know? Like, sorry, I hope nobody has Chicano studies. If you do, you probably already regret it. But there you have it, right? It's almost like they look at me and my door-to-door knocking, my rosary carrying, my brown scapular, my crucifix, and they look at me as if I'm dumb and I'm a bigot. We have to be careful with the claims that we're making. Let me bring up something to you. Now, this is off topic too. I see this a lot in Santa Ana. Now, I don't care how you feel about this president. I actually love this president so far that it gives me something to talk about. Okay? But here's the problem with a lot of us Mexicans in Santa Ana. We're quick to criticize this president for how he's treated, right? Or how we perceive he's treating us. Yet the president before him separated more families, deported more people than any other president prior to him. And this very community not once lashed out against that president. All I ask is that you be consistent. Have belief and have values. Know what you believe, know why you believe it, and be consistent with the belief. And I'm going to hopefully hand that on to you. See, because I don't belong to a Democratic or Republican Party. I belong to, this is what I feel is best for my family, my society, and my country. And that's what dictates. And that's what allows me to make critiques of whoever's in office. But when we don't do that, when we're not consistent, how do we come off as looking? Because really, if you look at it, the Mexican community looks very bigotry. It looks like we hate one guy just simply because he's white. And that's the only reason we protest the streets, where the president before him had the exact same policies. I mean, the travel ban, it was his before. And yet nobody had this outrage. So again, be consistent. Here's what we believe, here's why we believe, and this is why it's important for us not to come off sounding or looking as bigots, as dumb, as backwards, etc. So, faith is opposite, it should be opposed to science. Or wait, I put faith is the opposite of science, that's fine. The other would probably be better. So, you know, people look, again, faith doesn't mesh with science, right? Most think this. They pretty much think that religious people are ignorant. So, this is why we have to do what we do. We must be ready to give reasoned defenses for our faith. We must be ready to explain why we believe what we believe. And if you're a young single woman or a young single man, this is important for you so that you can communicate to your future spouse, your future wife, or whatever your vocation is, so you can know why you're doing what you're doing. You know, and hopefully even convince that person. Atheism and hostility. Again, faith is incompatible with reason and science. Christianity is not in touch with reality. Now, I know my audience doesn't know a lot of these arguments or a lot of these people, but Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Stephen Hawkins, these are atheists. They're on CNN, on Fox News, and they constantly write books that promote atheism and that really bash Christianity. So here are two prominent scientists, atheists, and anti-religious people. Well, they describe atheists as brights, right? And so in their books, and when you read them, and when they're in the news, and really, you can see, just Google, right? Now we can Google everything. Just go to YouTube and hear Daniel Dennett or Dawkins speak. Just find some interview on CNN. And you're going to see how they talk about atheists, and how they're going to talk about, well, the atheists, and the brights. We're the brights. They make themselves smell like, that's an elite group, man. Wow, wouldn't I want to be? Imagine being a 18, 19-year-old kid from Santa Ana, and now you're in college, and now you have these professors. Well, of course you're going to sit in your students and say, I want to be dumb. I want to be bright, just like them. And so you're going to espouse all their views. But that's how they're doing it, right? Drawing the conclusion that we're dumb and ignorant. The Catholic Church needs to catch up with the times, right? Isn't this another argument? It's so backwards. Can't the church get it? This is where we're going. Again, the old argument, if everyone jumps up the cliff, are you going to jump off with them? Think about it. This ain't the first time in civilization that entire civilization, entire culture or movement was believing something that was wrong and ended up to exist. I mean, think about the empires before us. The Roman Empire, in history, considered one of the greatest empires, spanning hundreds of years. The American experiment is young, 200 years. But why is the Roman Empire in existence? Well, I'll tell you why. It's moral degradation. Morally, they just started to do whatever they want, whenever they want. And they pulled themselves up. Sound familiar? It sounds like that's where we're headed. So faith is liberating and compatible with reason and science. Some groundbreaking scientists, and there I give you a list. Look at this, Nicholas Copernicus, a priest in the 15th century. Again, people talk about, oh, the church and Galileo, and see, the church just didn't want to accept science. No. And I guarantee you, you will hear that on the radio. You will get, some of you probably even got this in college classes recently. The church, yeah, you did?
I'm taking astronomy and we're talking about this.
Oh my goodness, oh, I'd love to be in that class. And has he talked about Galileo?
Yeah, we just covered that.
Oh, okay. But here was Galileo with this revolutionary finding. No, sorry. He wasn't the one. It was Nicholas Copernicus before him who already had the model, who was a Catholic priest, a monk, and his model is what we believe today. What Galileo did is Galileo took this and then tried to expound and say that the Bible was wrong. And so that's what Galileo did, and that's why he was kind of persecuted in his time. Now, when I mean persecuted, he was held up in a mansion in Rome with servants. Okay, so contrary to, oh, he was incarcerated and locked up. No, the guy still had his fine wine and cheese. Okay. So, anyways, there you go. I mean, you see a lot of these. There's so much misinformation out there. It's not even funny. Blaise Pascal, a mathematician. Look at this. Again, we owe a lot to Blaise Pascal. If you're a high school student and you study math. The study of fluids, concepts of pressure and vacuum, a mathematical calculator, probability theory. Greg Mendel, a monk in genetics, the discovery of the basic principles of hereditary. He's known as the father of modern genetics. He was a monk, folks. He was a monk. Louis Pasteur, okay, a microbiologist, a chemist. It goes on here, and you can go on. The names are there. Okay, so, and that's just Catholics. I mean, think about it if we add people who aren't Catholic. Albert Einstein, Fred Hoyle, Paul Davis. The list could go on and on. You need people who believed in God. Right now, just so you know, here's what I'm doing. In the next two classes, here's the goal. You all have a choice. You don't have to pay for this class now. Okay? Every person has a choice. Either God exists or he doesn't. Okay? And I can tell you this. A majority of the smartest people who have ever existed and who exist today believe in God. But you're free to believe whatever you want to believe. Nobody can force you. I can't force you. Your mother-in-law can't force you, so don't do it. I mean, she doesn't make menudo for the wedding, then so be it. But whatever the case may be, here's where I'm going if you're wondering why I'm doing this. Here's the thing, most people don't do this. I want you to know I taught this for 7th and 8th graders. I taught logic. As a matter of fact, anybody who's probably 65 years old or older, and I don't think there's anybody here that age. Maybe Jerry, how old are you, Jerry?
61.
61, well, we talked about this, right? They probably remember the time when they were in school, grade school, and you know what was being taught in grade school? Common sense, logic. I mean, that was grade school, And now, you have to, I don't know, you can't even get a PhD in it and teach that stuff later. So this is why I'm doing logic, this is why I'm doing this. I want to show you how the mind works. But here's your choice. In the next 2 days, we're going to look at this too, and then you make a choice. Obviously, I made mine, because I'm here. It's not the money, I already told you that. But there you have it, all these people. So faith and reason. John Paul II, St. John Paul II says this. Faith and reason are like two wings on which the human spirits rise to the contemplation of truth. Truth needs both faith and reason. Without both, we never reach the fullness of truth. We're limited. A scientist must put faith in the experimental data reported by other scientists and institutions, journals, etc. So everybody has to function in faith. The human spirit, human nature has to work within faith. Right? You have to. There's nothing you can know for sure. You're engaged. Yes, you're not married yet, right? No. Okay. Are you living together or not yet? Okay, you have options. You're engaged to him? Okay. How long have you guys been dating? Oh man, you don't know this and he does. Finally, we win one. Jeez. I was a little worried there. About how long?
Well, for like 4 years separated for 5 and then again.
Oh, this is one of those conflicts.
Yeah.
So then you know, sooner or later, you have to put your faith. Meaning, it's not absolute. You're engaged already? So you said yes. You said, yes, I will, but not, you haven't, okay? So, meaning there's still that process, and likewise for you. The idea is this, somehow people look at faith and just minimize it, or want to get rid of it, but you can't function without it. It's who we are. So my wife has, I was reading through my wife's PhD dissertation. I was actually present when she presented it, and I read through her work as she were here. I found a couple of errors, but anyways, you're going through this study. Now, of course, you read, it's like a book, right? These things are, it's a published. Whenever you write a dissertation for a PhD, it's published. It's in the library for the school. But she's referencing all these previous studies and all these previous models. Now, biomedical engineering, she does surgeries on the heart, so valves and things of that nature. Her emphasis was the heart. And so for 2-3 years, she had to do various studies, various surgeries, blood flow, etc. But a lot of that, she had to base a lot of previous findings to actually come to her conclusion. So she had to put faith in somebody else's work. So science works with faith as well. I'll leave you, I'm not going to cover everything. Logic. Logic is the structure of human thinking. It's how, somebody can, if you can correct that for me too. Again, these were I don't normally hand out these notes, I just actually type them up now. So I'm going through my chicken scratch, putting this together. It's how the mind structures its thought. Now this is important. This is why I want to tell you. Logic, it's how the mind structures its thought. How do you get from point A to point C? Because there's a B in the middle, and you got to connect the dots. And this is important. Trust me, when I debate people and people make arguments, I cringe because they lack cohesive logic. They don't know how to make an argument. Well, I won't get into some of the phrasings. And that's logic is more complex than what I'm going to give you now. There's different ways to make arguments. All dogs are mammals. Right? Right? All mammals are living creatures. Yes? Therefore, all mammals are dogs. No. And so you see, this is logic and syllogisms and how we form sentences and what we use as premises. So I'm not going to go into great detail with this, but I'm giving you a basics here. I don't think I did this with junior high students. I did this. But it's how we make arguments, it's how we process thoughts, and how we come to certain conclusions. If you deny logic, you have to use arguments that proceed according to the rules of logic. So if you wish to demonstrate logic's inadequacy, you must make your arguments in a logical way. Our minds demand it. It has to make sense. If you ever talk to somebody and you're arguing 2 different points, now, most of the frustration comes in this. Neither party knows how to make an argument. Right? And where do we end up? What? Wow, it's because you're racist. And oh, it's because he cheated on his wife, and that's why he's a horrible politician. And therefore, the argument, that's a ad herring. You're just kind of throwing things out there. It doesn't pertain to the issue at hand at all. It doesn't pertain. This is why politics, and again, I don't get involved in politics. I don't do it. I don't have a TV, okay, so I don't watch news. I mean, I listen to talk radio. My wife and I, we haven't owned a TV in 5 years. My kids do that. Because it's just all too much. Nobody knows how to make an argument anymore. Everybody just name calling, everybody does things for me. That's not to say I'm not involved. I vote at every election I have since I was 15. I'm very involved in what I want for my city, what I want for my state. I know I live in California, I'm trying to move. And just how I think society should be structured. But I base all my votes or my thought process or my views on reason, on love, on what I believe, and I can make arguments for them. I won't talk to somebody who'll just end up to just resorting to name calling, because then it's just you get nowhere. But if you get two good people and you're two good friends and you're arguing about something, whatever the case may be, you'll notice the frustration comes from the fact that nobody's actually making a point. Nobody's getting you from point A to point C and tying the dot with B. G.K. Chesterton noted once that no one is more self-consistent than a madman. If he begins with the fantasy that he is Napoleon, then he rightly draws the conclusion that he should be ruling Europe. That's the beautiful thing about crazy people. They're consistent, right? They actually follow. Their mind works within a frame and now they're not tied to reality. That's why they're insane, because they're not tied to reality, right? Now, if you don't know Napoleon, that's probably because you've been in school here in our educational system. But Napoleon, right, if you study history and Western civilization, right, he ruled Europe at one point. He was from France. And so if a person thinks himself Napoleon, then what did you say?
He was born in Sicily.
Oh yeah, born in Sicily. Yeah, that's right. But the empire was in France.
Yes,
thank you. Normally I can get away with this stuff because my audience, they took high school here. He obviously had a good high school class. Now I gotta review my history notes. So that's another side thing. I like history. I read one history book a year, and by that I mean most of the stuff I'm reading is theology. I used to read one literature book because I used to like, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Stephen King. I know he doesn't like Christianity. Dean Koontz, he's a Catholic. And Sigrid Undset, Nobel Prize winner, one of the greatest. Sigrid Undset wrote one of the greatest saint biographies that I've ever read. If you want. And then also wrote one of the greatest books, Kristen Lauman's daughter. It's a 1,200-page book, but well worth the read. But anyways, I used to tie in one literature book, one history book, and then the rest was just, the Bible and theology. Now that I'm in school, we'll see. But thank you. Yes, Sicily, but ruled the empire, which was France at that time, right? So therefore, if he is a madman, if you did believe yourself to be Napoleon, then it would follow logically that you should rule Europe, right? That would be a logical conclusion. But of course, principles of logic are principles of reasoning about the real world, about reality. So don't go off thinking yourself Napoleon or Princess Diana. So if you don't have logic, what do you have? You have unprincipled assertion. Might makes right, brute strength. If there is no way to prove your point, then who wins? The strongest win. And who are the strongest? Stalin in China. What is it? Mao in China, right? And Hitler. So if you take the past, look at the last century, we all talk about Hitler, but he was actually number 3 on that list, right? When it came to killing people, he wasn't even number 1. Stalin estimates anywhere between 20 to 100 million. And most historians say probably about 80 million would be a safe estimate. In China, we don't even know. It's probably over 100, right? And, Nazi, what'd you say? Somebody say something? Oh. And Hitler, we got, 5.5 million exterminated, 6.5 million Jews, and the rest were Christian, a lot Catholics. I've had the privilege of going to Dachau, Germany, in Munich. And in Munich, this is where they house a lot of the Catholic priests. And they work them to death. You walk into the gates, and the gates say, the work will set you free. Okay? That's where they work you to death. They had the ovens, they had the cremation things, right? But that was more Auschwitz. Here is where they had different concentration camps. Dachau in Germany was the number 2 biggest concentration camp. Auschwitz, of course, was the biggest. I'm sure you know at least that much. The four givens, right? So now that we've learned something of knowledge, sorry, I'm not. It's just the way to hopefully wake you up and get your attention. Let me do this though. Before I carry on, let me give you all a, let's do a 3-minute break. Hopefully that's enough for the restroom. So it's 8:13 now, so I'll see you back at 8:16.
You should explain the role.
Oh yeah, and I'm going to hand out a roll sheet when you get back. You'll go ahead and write. Here's what we're going to do. If you're a guest, you're not going to be a student. And who knows if you keep coming or not. And if you don't worry, my feelings. So I said the argument was a herring. It's ad hominem whenever you attack the person. A herring is when you jump off subject. Okay? So I've been corrected twice. Now, in my defense, you know, those were honest slip-ups. But just so you know, I'm right about 99.8% of the time. Okay? The last time I was wrong, I think I was 7. In case you're wondering, because I gave you all this criticism about how your other teachers, you should be sitting there saying, why should I believe this guy? Yeah, Becky, you have a question?
Oh, I was telling you about the dream I had about Pope John Paul. Can you tell me you were right?
Oh, yeah, there you go, that's right. She did have a dream a lot. So here's the roll. Again, you guys can sign up, you don't have to. But you guys can sign up whoever. If you're just going to be a guest, just sign in the bottom. Okay, the four givens. So these are four givens. This actually works with logic, meaning these are things that they're given. No matter who you talk to, we have to follow certain principles. The first principle is the principle of non-contradiction, right? We can't say something, let's call it A, right, is both A and not A. I can't be Victor and at the same time be not Victor. Does that make sense? I gotta be one or the other. Now, let me give you this in practical forms, right? You can't say Islam in all its beliefs and all its creeds is true, and Christianity in all its beliefs and all its creeds is true. You can't do that. Why? Because they believe different things. So one of them, logically, the mind says has to be wrong. Now, is everything Islam believes wrong? No. Islam believes that in a God who created the world. Do Christians believe in a God who created the world? Yes. Okay. Islam, contrary to what you see on you, but actually believes in the sacred aspect of human beings, that humans are sacred and that they have a special purpose, more special than all the other creation. Christianity believes the same thing. Now, Islam rejects that Jesus is true God and true man. Christianity believes that Jesus is true God and true man. Can they both be right? No. So there you go. There's our first principle. That's application, okay? So, again, if you deny this principle, the denial presumes its validity, right? Because then you have to, again, so you see a lot of these, what I'm giving you, if you want to deny the teaching that I'm giving you, it's going to self-defeat your own argument. Because what I'm giving you is true because it conforms to the mind, it conforms to logic. Okay, so those are just kind of simple things. The second given here when it comes to logic and how we think. The general reliability of sense perception. And this works like this. Our 5 senses, I'm teaching my son the 5 senses now, we have Dr. Seuss, right? So he's got 5 senses. But our 5 senses help us conform to reality. It allows us to know what is true and to come to know reality. If I had a glass, and in that glass I stuck a pencil, what would you see that pencil do? Bend, right? It's an optical illusion. Now, why would you know that that is not the reality of the pencil? How can you know that that's not the reality of the pencil? You what? Well, you saw it go in, but more importantly, it was rigid and you touched it, right? You can touch it. So your senses can help you come to the truth. Meaning your mind will tell you that's just an illusion, right? You're in the desert, you see this, the Bahamas, and you see beautiful wind and water. Whatever the case may be, a beautiful night. You know it's because you're thirsty, you know you're dying of thirst, and now your mind's been tricked up. Okay, you know that. So we trust our reason or mind to discover why the senses or sense can sometimes seem to misrepresent what really is there. Sense perception is generally reliable. Reason makes up for what is lacking. Meaning, if all you had was that one sense, right? Reason makes up for that. I mean, using your five senses, you can come to know what the truth is. I don't have a quarter, so I'll do this next week. The principle of causality. It's fine, I'll do it. The principle of causality. For every effect, there must be a cause. Now, this isn't the cosmological argument. I'm going to get back to that. This law underlines both the working of logic and sense perceptions. So, you see a young boy, a young man. He's got flowers, he's got chocolate. Then comes a kiss. Then, you come to the conclusion that that is a causal relationship. Meaning, right, there's a cause and effect. Again, scientists must assume every effect that they are investigating has a cause. Otherwise, they would have nothing to explain. They couldn't explain anything. So, again, how do we come to know these things? Well, why is this thing happening to me? Well, because here are the causes of it. And so now we can come to the truth of something. But it's how the mind works. Again, that's what I'm trying to get you to understand here. It's how your mind works. I'll tell you this. For most high school students and college students that I meet, they do not know why they believe what they believe. Most of them, I'll just tell you flat out, most of them. And I teach this class year in and year out, so I meet a lot of people. Not only that, I've met a lot of people just by door knocking or by going to different parishes. So again, most people don't even know. They've just actually, all we've done is we've just been fed something, and it's just what we believe. Now it's not your fault. We trusted the people that were with us. We trusted the people that were with us. One of the reasons I got rid of TV is because, like, my brain is so small, it's so limited. I'm so not smart, right? Like, I read people and I think to myself, man, this guy's brilliant. You know, Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI is one of the most brilliant minds I've ever had the privilege to know. But you have all this information, you get too much of it, and then it's not good. Not for me, because I'm too dumb. So, you know, I gotta undo a lot of things in myself, but the same thing with you guys. Again, like before, if someone argued against causality, he would have to present a self-destructing argument. Why? Because he would want to cause a change in your thought process. The notion of self-consciousness. This tells me that I exist. You may believe that everything is illusion, but you are still left with yourself, the entity that is entertaining the illusion. Self-consciousness presumes that there is a self. I know I exist if I try to pretend that I am uncertain about everything else. Now, I have a philosophy major, and one of my godsons studies philosophy. He's a PhD in medicine, a pharmacist. But he was in this very class. Now, this might sound funny to you, but, you know, if you read modern philosophy, by modern philosophy, I'm talking 18th, 19th, 20th century, you'll know that this is a very common theme. The Matrix, right? How many have seen the Matrix? I love the Matrix. But the Matrix has that whole idea, right? Where it's all an illusion. None of this is true. Do you know how many people imbibe that? I'm sure you got a lot of that, yes? Yeah. Oh yeah, this is big in philosophy. Probably dying out a little bit now. I mean, if you got new philosophy teachers who are probably not espousing this as much, they're just espousing more. The big trend now in the past 20 years of philosophy is subjectivism and relativism. But they still talk about this. You still have to read these individuals, right? Descartes and Sartre and things of that nature, right? So, I know you're thinking to yourself, well, why would you even bring this up? Because there are people who think you can't know truth. My godson was one of them. He was taking this class, right? His mom's a Jew, so by birth he's a Jew. But he had a PhD, didn't really believe. He was really just taking this class because he had to marry my cousin, and my cousin's mom makes good menudo, and he wanted menudo for the rest of his life. But really, our family, if you're going to get married, it has to be in a church, right? And it's got to be a big wedding, it's got to be a priest, and, you know, all 10 sacraments, because we're extra Catholic. I'm just kidding. But, so there he is in this class, taking this class, and then my cousin comes up to me after, like, we're about like 5, 7 classes into it, she goes, wow, you know, Ryan doesn't believe. You know, he just doesn't believe, you know, and this and that and the other. And I'm like, well, if he doesn't believe, I'm not going to confirm him. I'm not going to force him to get confirmed. I don't think he should do it if he doesn't want to do it. You can still get married. The diocese can give you permission to marry a pagan, a non-baptized individual. I know I like using these words because it wakes people up. It's a technical term, but right? A non-Christian, right? You have to get permission to marry a non-Christian, a non-baptized person, because at that point it's not a sacrament marriage, you're just following the canonical form. So I said, and she goes, well, just talk to him. And I'm ending this class, it's 9 o'clock right now. Work before shift, come here, so, okay, fine, I'll talk to him real quick. We're in the car, popped up here for like 3 hours. And he's talking and he's going, his mentor was an ex-priest, an ex-Jesuit priest. So I know that this, I definitely know he's been fed a lot of garbage. But it's not cheap garbage, because if you know anything about an ex-Jesuit priest, you know they have high levels of education. Meaning, even if the knowledge they have is wrong, they know it really well. And they can present their information really, really well. So he's going through and he's throwing Nietzsche, he's throwing Audi, he's just throwing everything at me. Now thank God, I'm a young guy, I don't have a PhD, I've had some philosophy classes, I've taken more since. But you know, I've kind of self-taught myself philosophy a little bit, and I don't like it. It's very difficult. It's just very mind-bending, things like that. You can get very confused in philosophy. And so we're going for that, but the whole thing was that you just can't know truth. That was the whole thing. Now I'm at my wit's end. It's about 10:30, 11 o'clock. I gotta go home. I'm hungry. As you can look at me, I was withering away. And so I'm looking at him, and I'm just like, and it just dawned on me. And I looked at him, and I just looked, and I just stopped. I said, Ryan. I said, why are you getting married? Is it just to procreate, to further the species? Because is that it? And he just kind of sat there and thought. And I said, look at my cousin. I looked at her, and they were in the front seat. I'm in the back seat. I said, do you love her? And he said, yes. And I said, is that true? I guarantee you that was the argument. After we had this great academic, it was great. I was holding my own. I sounded really smart. Right? Again, I wasn't wrong. Remember the last one was wrong? It was 7 years old. So, that's it. It just clicked. And at that point, he said, yeah, that's true. Therefore, I can know truth. Therefore, now I can discern what is true and what isn't. Now, he's got a PhD. For some reason, have had several PhDs run through my classes. They're always different. I like you guys better. But he showed up with his Bible, his catechism, had notes. Well, you said this, and you said that. And had me on my toes. Got married in the church, goes to confession regularly, Sunday Mass, has his 3 kids, right? They have 3? Or are they have 4? They're 3 kids, all baptized, right? All baptized in the church. And truth. So if you're wondering why I'm bringing this up, it's because your kids today, if you have kids, and if they go to college, and that's one of my, they're going to be, they look at you and there is no truth. Truth is whatever you make it. That's where we're at. So, reality and truth exist outside of our mind. That's why I'm giving you these classes. That's why I'm giving you these talks. Now, how can we know God exists? These are the 5 ways. I'm going to do them really quick. You have them in your notes. I'm going to touch upon them next week. Again, remember, we never got out early on this class. You're lucky if I let you out 30 seconds early. So, I'm on time here. The first 3 arguments, these come from Thomas Aquinas. And Thomas Aquinas was a great theologian and a philosopher. And if you've had any good study in philosophy, you have to at least talk about at least Augustine and Thomas Aquinas, because these were great minds that didn't just do religious stuff, but went across the boundaries into theology, into philosophy. So the first argument, and these arguments of Thomas Aquinas are actually very short. In the book, the 5 arguments are made very simply, but then he expounds in the rest of the Summa a lot of his thought. And the way Thomas Aquinas makes his argument is by question and answer and objection. And so if you read Thomas Aquinas, which I have, and I don't try to sell myself out as if I know everything of Thomas Aquinas, because I just don't. He's very difficult to read, and his public work is really the easiest stuff to read. And that's what most people, theologians and philosophers, read. But it's very clear. He can help you get. This man was he was a mind like no other. You read certain people, did you ever read Aristotle? If you read Aristotle, and I've read Aristotle, I've read several of his writings. When I first read Aristotle, here's the good thing, I just walked away thinking to myself, how can a person be that smart without the grace of Jesus Christ? Because he, this is 300 years, 400 years before Christ. I mean, that's just a mind. Aristotle was just a mind. Like it's utterly like, I just don't understand how he could have wrote what he wrote, understood what he understood. It's great read. It's hard read, but it's great read. So same thing with Thomas Aquinas. These are just, God gives us these things, you know, these minds, and they're given to us at various times in history so that we can grow and learn and better understand Him. The argument of motion or change and development, right? Everything in the world that we experience and we know undergoes changes. Everything is in motion, right? Proceeding from the potential to the actual. Everything moves and changes, yet nothing moves and changes itself. Everything that moves must be moved by something already in motion. Everything is in motion. So my son and I were also doing the solar system, right? So just yesterday at dinner, we were talking about how the earth is always moving. Spinning and moving, spinning and moving. And as you know, everything is in motion, right? You know, do you have that quarter?
Yeah.
So, you see this? What is it? It's a quarter, right? Standing, it's still, right? It's not moving, right? Wrong. Right? This quarter is made up of a bunch of subatomic molecules, atoms, right? That's constantly in motion, right? I want you to feel this. I want you to bend it. Bend it for me. Bend it in half if you can. You can. It's solid, right? Wrong. It's not solid. Actually, 99.9% of this is just space. You see that? Oh, you believe that little piece of bread is really Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
That's really what you believe? How dumb can you be? Okay, think about it. You see bread, you taste bread, but the church is teaching that it's the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. How wrong can you be if we're wrong about so many things already? Things aren't always as they appear. So again, you're beginning to see the arguments of motion, how these things work, why it's important. And I'll probably bring that up again when we talk about the Eucharist. But that's a big thing, right? I mean, how many people see Mexicans, Catholics, and I say Mexicans, it's just Santa Ana, but we got Filipinos here too. But no, it's just because sometimes we're picked on, you know, and sometimes we feel small, you know, and it's really not our parents' fault, because our parents did the best for us. They came from another country here, and they started working, and maybe they don't have the time to educate us in the faith as well. But sometimes, you know, people are looking at us, do you really believe that's God? Like, you really believe that's God? Yes, I really believe that's God. But it looks like a participant. I get it, but it's God, 100%, true God or true man. And I know your mind's, because that's what we believe, right? 70% of Catholics don't believe that because they don't know it. But that's what we believe. But look, I've already demonstrated to you how you could be wrong about so many other things. So the argument of motion, right? You have this chain of motion. You cannot, your mind will not let you accept that all of this exists because there's an infinite regression of motion. Because remember my student, I told you my 7th grade student, well, why does the world exist? Why does the universe exist? What does the student answer? What did he say? The Big Bang, right? Right? And who gave us the Big Bang, theory of the Big Bang? Does anybody know where it came from? A Catholic priest. So I look at my student and I say, what does the Big Bang prove? It proves that we had a beginning. And I get it. Multi-universes, bouncing universes, all these things. Well, scientists have already concluded, they come to the conclusion that even a multi-universe has to have a beginning. Right? The BDG theorem. Right? Is that right? Did I get it right? I gotta get all the names. I'll show you a video on that soon. But anyways, there you have it. This everything's in motion, but yet we have to have a beginning. Well, if you see a train, and then that train, and you're stopped beside that train, what do you think? You think that there's an end to that train, right? But you also think that there's a beginning to it. There's one in the beginning that's pulling all the other boxcars, right? You expect that to end. You don't expect it to go on for all infinity. Well, right? That motor, that locomotive, we call God. God is the unmoved, unchanged mover. Your mind can. So what I'm doing is I'm just making arguments for God. How you can know God exists philosophically. Why am I doing this? Because I want you to know that belief in God is actually the smarter thing to do, right, than not believing in God. It makes more sense. There are more arguments. It's more scientifically, philosophically sound to believe in God than not believe in God. The argument of efficient causality, similar to the first. Every effect has a cause. Now this doesn't go back to our other one, but it's very similar. A causal chain cannot be infinite. Yet neither can any cause in a sequence be considered an ultimate being, because if we deny that the first effect, its own cause, we would nullify all the subsequent effects. So therefore, you must have an uncaused first cause, the first cause of which we call God. Meaning you say, well, therefore everything has to have a cause and effect, and you go infinitely. No, there has to be one that is uncaused, and that we call God. Meaning, think about this. Just go home and think about this. Sometimes, really, I don't think people think about this that much. Think about the existence of the universe. Now, how old is the universe? Does anybody know? What are we at, like 13.6 billion years? Am I, give or take 0.1 billion? I don't know. It's just lucky there's no science. I'm lucky my wife's not here. But anyways, the universe had a beginning. Think about this. There was a point when nothing existed. You can't, as a matter of fact, go home and meditate on that. It's so hard to even conceive in the brain. There was a point when nothing existed, and what happened? An infinite being, a being that our mind can barely understand by analogy, brought the entire universe into existence. An entire universe that no human being and no lifespan will ever be able to understand or comprehend the fullness of, or its depth, or its length. This won't happen. That's how big the mind of God is and bigger. So, the third argument, the argument of possibility and necessity. We observe that things are transitory. They receive their existence from something else. Things in the world do not arise suddenly out of nothing, but rather are derivatives of other things. This is what we call the argument of contingent beings. Everything is contingent on something else. Everything. You know what osmosis is? Yes? Plants grow? Right? Sun, water, you all know that, right? It's a constant chain, right? Everything is contingent upon something else. And so forth, so is the universe. So are we. We're contingent upon air, oxygen, the earth, the way the earth sits on its axis. Everything is contingent upon something else, and that's contingent. Well, if some beings are contingent, there must be an ultimate being that is neither transitory, that doesn't change, derivative, doesn't derive itself from something else, but necessary. Necessary in and of itself. And this being we call God. Now again, know this, I'm simplifying some highly philosophical arguments, sorry. Meaning, these are just some notes here to kind of, but we can, you know, me and my philosophy student could sit here and just go over one argument for probably about 2 or 3 hours, okay? Meaning, taking every philosophical conclusion to its end. So those are the 3 cosmological arguments. The next are what we call philosophical theological arguments, the considerations of end. Meaning ultimately, everything's come to exist. Why do you exist? See, science can answer how you came to exist, why you're sick, how your brain functions, all those things. But why? Why do you exist? No, I'm not putting you on the spot. I want you to think about it. Sorry, he's looking at me. I can't believe my wife got me into this. I gotta tell my mother-in-law we're not cut out for this. But that's a big question. Why? Why? Why do I work all day, grind all day, you know, have my wife and house and kids and you know, just all of it? Why? Why? Because that's what God's called me to. Because I know there's an end to what I'm doing. I know there's a purpose to what I'm doing. You know what the problem is now? You, your student, your friends don't realize that there's a purpose to life. And so you know what they do? They throw it away. They waste it and they kill themselves. And so they want to end their lives because they're sick and they're suffering. Not realizing that their life is valuable, that their life has a purpose, that even that suffering has a purpose, and God has a plan for all of them. God has a plan for every single one of you individually, in which only you can live that plan, and only you from all history, from all humanity, God has called you to live in this day and age, and this time, and to do what you're about to do. And if you don't realize that, then you're in for a hard and long marriage. But if you realize that and you embrace it, and you realize that God is calling you to this, then everything changes. And life is better. It's not easier, it's better, right? Here's the problem. Don't believe in God. Have no faith. Get from one door to the end. What are you going to do? You're going to trip, fall, stump your toe, maybe break a tooth. Have faith, have God. The obstacles are still there. But what do you have? You have sight. You can walk. You can navigate. That's what God gives us, okay? He allows us to do that. So, the degrees of perfection. All things are greater to a lesser degree of perfection to other things. So these are, again, theological. We say something is more or less true. Something is more or less good. Think about this. Just think about this. The arguments of marriage, whatever they may be, however you may feel. And trust me, however you may feel right now, just be patient with me. We're going to get to that. We're going to cover all of that. And I'm going to show you that there is truth and beauty in God's plan for marriage between a man and a woman. But I understand and I sympathize with people. Okay, I do. One of my best friends lives in a same-sex relationship, living with her person, all those things. But she's my best friend. We have a beer every now and then. I talk to her on a daily basis. Okay? So I am not a bigot. I am not a hater. But I am also not a denier of the truth. It's not what I am. Okay? So just be patient. But here's the problem. If we say something is more or less true, then there has to be that which is absolute truth. And if you're going to accept that marriage is something more than a man and a woman, then where do you stop? And who decides where you stop? And you better be careful, because that road is dangerous, perverse, sick. Because there's a group on the East Coast called the Man-Boy Love Movement that believes that grown men should be able to have sex and marry and be with boys who are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. They have a website. I don't encourage you to look it up. Where does it stop? Profound. But if we're going to say something is more or less true, something is more or less good, then there has to be that which is absolute good, absolute truth, and that is the marker of which all things are based. All things, whether you're a Christian or not. Read the Declaration of Independence, read the Constitution. And I get it, most Americans don't. You should. You know how many times I've had arguments with people, professors, teachers, talk about this country, and they haven't even read the basic documents of this country. But read it here. It talks about God. Nature's God. It gives us basic rules and laws of which everybody can live by. Not everybody will agree with, but which will give a just and humane society. Because think about it, if you give everybody what they want, what do you have? Anarchy. And therefore civilization ends. And the American experiment is over. That's basic, guys. That's logic. You see, hopefully I'm trying to make the point. Hopefully you realize that. Does anybody work in construction or engineering? Okay, so some of you who work in construction. If you measure something, let's say you're going to measure something that's a mile long. Or if you're measuring some ductwork that you got to put on. You got 18 feet of duct you got to put into the vents. Or vents that you got to put into the ceiling. 1 foot has to be a perfect foot. A perfect 12 inches. Of which all other feet, that's the standard. So that you can have the exact measurement that you need. And it's going to be exactly where you're supposed to be. And so that's the standard of all your measurement. Be it yards, be it feet, whatever the case may be. That is the standard. So where are we at? Well, there must be some perfect standard against which all qualities are measured. And the fullness of all that perfection we call God. God is the standard of which we base everything on. If something is more or less true, then ask yourself this. What is absolute truth, and what does truth want me to do? It's pretty big. I get it, and I'm just going to tell you right now. Be compassionate, be sympathetic to people who don't know what you know or haven't learned what you've learned. Okay? Because everybody walks a different journey and a different point in life. And I'll tell you this. God loves everyone, and God loves you no matter what. And God loves your friends, your family members, no matter what. However, He loves us too much to leave us where we're at. And God is demanding. Why? Because love is demanding. You should know that. This relationship goes back and forth a couple of times. Why? Because a relationship is demanding, because love is demanding. If your love is so great, if His love is so demanding, then what makes you think God's isn't? This is the foundation, the cornerstone of all of us. I mean, again, I'm making basic arguments here, and yet our society just doesn't get that anymore. The argument of design and finality, intellectual action. And we'll end up with this argument, and I'll save the others for when we come back. Things that lack any intelligence still act in a purposeful way. They seem to have specific ends and observe certain patterns, certain laws of the universe. Think about this, the law of gravity, the law of thermodynamics. Why do things do what they do? Right? Oh, this is great. Who was it? Stephen Hawking. You should watch this. It's on CNN. I'll have to give you the argument. I'll give it to you next week. Remind me to give it to you next week. Stephen Hawking says this: while the universe can create itself out of nothing, you don't need God. You don't need God to explain to you how the universe came into existence. You know why, he says? He says because we have such a thing called gravity. Bam! CNN, Fox News, Google it. It's great. You're going to listen to it and it's be like, man, this guy. So this is one of the smartest physicists in the world. This is a smart, smart mind. Mine doesn't compare to his, not at all. Wow, did he get it so wrong? Because how do you have gravity without a universe, without mass? Basic. A 7th grader, a 6th grader can answer that. And yet he sold this book, he proposed this theory, and he sold millions of books. And a lot of people watched that interview and said, yeah, that makes sense. I guess I don't need God to explain the existence of the universe. But think about gravitational pull, thermodynamics. Think about the Earth axis. Think about the Earth axis. 1 degree to the right, 1 degree to the left, what happens? We either freeze or we burn. But there is no life on Earth. Why? Everything minutely to its last detail. And here we are. Here's life. This is design. You're telling me there's not a purpose to this? Evolution. Think about evolution. Even if you want to believe evolution that doesn't have God behind it. Think about Darwin's evolution. What does Darwin's evolution still have? It still has a pattern. It still has to follow laws. It has purpose. It has orders. It has structures. The strongest of the fitted still works within a structure, within an end. Okay, so it just doesn't work. The human eye, look at a system, irreducible complexity, composed of retina, cornea, lens, virtuous humor, aqueous humor, cannot simply be the result of arbitrary process. The eye is made with a certain design, made for the purpose of seeing, and each of its parts assumes the function of all the other parts. What good would an antecedent organ have served in any hypothetical earlier stages, before that organ conceived? Meaning, if you want to assume that we've evolved, then why was there ever a socket and a pupil if there was never an end to it? So even if we evolve from some lesser form into this greater form, you still have to have God behind it. You still have to have God behind it. So evolution doesn't contradict faith. Evolution doesn't. As a matter of fact, G.K. Chesterton said this: to believe in evolution, that takes a greater leap of faith. It takes more faith than just to believe that God made man out of the dirt and a woman from the side of man. It takes more faith, more devotion to believe in the other. That's what he said. And again, when you study it, it's true. A watch analogy. You're walking on the beach, in the sand. You live in California, so you can follow this. Right? Off in the distance, you see something glimmer. You bend down, you start digging to the sand. You pick it up. And you look at this, what you've just picked up. And you think to yourself in your head, of course there would be a watch there. Because after billions of years of that water pounding on that sand, this is what would happen. Now you could think that, but is it plausible? Will you accept that to be true? You would look at this, it's detail, it's fine-tuning, it's precision and time. And mind you, this is a Casio, but it's lasted a long time. I should have brought my Omega. That one was a gift. Anyways, you conclude, you look at it, and it's all its intricacy, it's all its detail, and you say, if there's a watch, there must be a watchmaker. I'll put everything in its place purposely, right, with that end. We look at the universe, we see an ordered universe requires what? An intelligent creator. And that creator we call God. God exists. The problem with high school kids, junior high kids, and your kids, and if you're going to have kids, and you better make sure you get this. Because trust me, I have taught academic professionally junior high kids and high school kids. And it is dark, and it is grim, and it is depressing. And why? Because they have no purpose. They don't know why they're here. They don't know what's there. They don't know what awaits them. They don't know the purpose to their life. And so what do you have? A 40-year-old playing video games at home, right? Instead of working, grinding his butt, trying to make a living for who? For his wife, for the kids that God has put into his life, or studying out for the priesthood, and become a religious student. For what? Because of the purpose of saving souls. Because God has a plan for him, and that plan has meaning, and that plan has purpose. But now if we don't have this, if there is no God, then what does it matter? It doesn't. And since parents aren't home to teach their kids about God, and since the rest of the world is teaching them that God doesn't exist, yes in junior high, yes in high school, yes very, very often and in every college class, people lose hope. And your kids leave the faith. 7 out of 10 Catholics. 7 out of 10 Catholics will leave the Catholic faith when they enter into college in the first year, whether they went to Catholic school or not. Okay, so if you think you're Catholic, go to. I worked in a Catholic school. It didn't give me much hope. But you know what I mean? We're up against the law, and I get it. And here, I want to teach this class, and I'm going to teach this class. This is why I have to start at the beginning. This is why I start with philosophy. The next class, next week, we're going to, again, talk about world religions. And you're thinking to yourself, why isn't this guy talking about Jesus and how Jesus loves everybody? Because I need you to get a proper understanding that God exists. And if God exists, what does that mean for you? If God does exist, is God pleased with this present state of affairs? If God does exist and He loves you, does He love the fact of how you've been living out your end of the relationship? And think about how you answer that. Because how you demand so much in your relationship, if you don't hold God to at least the same standard, then woe to you. That's a rude awakening. We'll finish off the other arguments and we'll pick up where we left off. I won't have to do any admin in the beginning stuff. You don't have to pay for the class now. Take a registration, bring it next week. Just so you know, next week if I am not here, they will still have class. I'm going to have a substitute. But if I can't get them to substitute for me, then I will still be here. The class will be as normal. The substitute I have, there's a class in which I show a video that they will teach that class. So you're still not wasting your time. There is still room and there's still space available if you want to, come. Just know this: the class is 33 classes long. If you know you're not going to make it, then don't pay. But once you pay me and once I process that money, I don't want checks. Paid with cash. Go to the bank this week. Don't give me a check. Do we have any checks? Nobody's paid with checks? Here's why. Because Doug and I, usually we're really bad at this, we turn in all the money to the parish like a week before confirmation. And I had a student last week say, hey, you cashed my check. And I'm like, well, you gave it to me. Yeah, but I dropped that out of your class. I'm like, how was I supposed to know that? I don't keep track of that. I just cash everything in. So just give me cash. I don't want to deal with that anymore. She's probably going to have to come sometime in the next couple of weeks because I asked the parish to issue them a check back, but if not, I'll have to pay it back cash. So don't register, don't turn anything in today. If you already have Doug has it, that's fine. Just bring it next week. Lori is going to help Doug and I kind of streamline this process. That roll sheet has your phone number and email address, yes? In case something happened, and something happened last year where I had to teach 2 classes in a row, I can get a hold of you and let you know not to come. Rarely does that happen, but it does happen. So make sure I have your information. Okay, let's close in prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Entrusting ourselves to our Blessed Mother, a mother who cares for us and loves us better than our own mother, and who wants only the best for us. Just as every mother wants the best for her children. We entrust our lives to her, this endeavor, your life, your vocation, your marriage, your first communion, your confirmation, and all the things that you have before you. Hand him over to our mother because she will take care of us and she will guide us as we pray. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Bring your notes to class, please. I'll hand these out next week. I forgot, but if anybody needs to go to confession, I have confession handouts here. But I will hand them out next week. So, yeah.